So, navigating USA jobs, it's not as easy as one might think. So, we have the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Kathy Luckado and Tiffany joining us here today as they will talk about navigating USA jobs. So, Tiffany Morales and Kathy, I'll let you kind of take it away if you want to also introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Lori.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Luckado, and I'm a management analyst with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. I'm a retired Navy chief, and I was very fortunate to have someone as a mentor that helped me break through to get into federal service. And I'm always anxious to give back and assist others with that. Tiffany?
My name is Tiffany Morales. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I served one enlistment. And then followed my husband around through the rest of his enlistments, which is how we ended up here in New Orleans. I'm also a management analyst with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. I've been with the agency since 2015. A little bit about the agency. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is often referred to as BOEM, is a federal agency that is part of the Department of Interior. Our job is to make sure marine resources off the U.S. coast are developed in an economically and friendly and economically responsible way. We have 4 regions throughout the United States. We have an Alaska region, a headquarters office, which is in Virginia, Pacific region, and then the Gulf of Mexico region, which is here in New Orleans, where both Kathy and I work. To get started, if you go to the, you're on the slide. So USAjobs connects job seekers with federal employment opportunities across the United States, as well as around the world. As the federal government's official employment site, USAjobs helps the right people find the right jobs. USAjobs helps recruit and retain a world-class government workforce for the American people. Federal agencies use USAjobs to host job openings, match qualified applicants to those jobs. USAjobs also serves as the central place to find opportunities in hundreds of federal agencies and organizations. The US federal government relies on more than 2 million Americans and foreign nationals to work in the civil service. Civilians like you help the federal government fulfill its essential duties in service to the American people. So we hope that you can find a way to serve through USAjobs. I found my first job in the federal government, which was as a secretary through USAjobs. So there's a starting place for everyone. There's every type of job that you can imagine. Next slide. So USAjobs is now using login.gov for our sign-in process. It's a service that offers secure and private online access to government programs such as federal benefits, services and applications. And once you create a login, you can sign into USAjobs and create a profile. Next slide. Your profile is extremely important. It includes all the information you need to apply to a federal job. It'll hold your name, address, other important information that are submitted for each job application. It's important to create a profile because we can use this information to improve your job search results and help you fill in parts of job applications. With a profile, you can also upload resumes, save jobs, and save job searches. One of my favorite parts of USAjobs profile is that you can upload all of your documents in there and keep them there. I believe you can have up to 5 resumes. You can, any supporting documentation that you would submit to a job application, you can keep in there. So it's easier to apply for positions. Next slide. So for resumes, you can either upload a resume or create one using the resume builder. You can store up to 5 unique resumes within your profile. This will help you target your resume to different types of jobs. And you can also make your resume searchable. You can only make one resume searchable at a time. Only certain file types are searchable, so it's best to use either Word, text-based PDFs, text files, or resumes created using the resume builder tool. If you make your resume searchable and your profile is complete, your profile will be searchable too. Make sure when you are uploading a resume, you don't include any classified or sensitive information such as social security number. They ask that you don't include photos or any personal information such as age, gender, religious affiliation, etc. Next slide. So the search tool. USAjobs search tool, the more details you provide, the more effective your results will be. You can search for jobs by keyword, occupation, job category, agency, location, salary range, or even pay grade. You can save searches and receive notifications, which is extremely important. You can set up automated job searches based on search criteria, and USAjobs will email you, and you can choose for that to be either daily, weekly, or monthly when there are new jobs entered in the database that meet your needs. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, and she's going to speak about what to focus on once you have found a job announcement that you're interested in.
Okay, thanks, Tiffany. We could just stay on the current slide. I just wanted to discuss briefly hiring paths and eligibility. So you might be wondering, which jobs am I eligible to apply for? And understanding your eligibility will help you know which jobs you should apply to. There are several different eligibilities in the federal government, and they are called hiring paths. You can apply to any job, but you may not be eligible for the job if you don't fall into one of the required hiring paths listed in the job announcement. And if you don't fall into one of the required hiring paths, then the agency will reject your application. For an example, anyone is eligible to apply for a job that is open to the public as long as they're a US citizen. But not everyone is eligible to apply for a job that is open to current federal employees. It's not unusual for a job to be open to multiple hiring paths or groups. For an example, a job might be open to the public and also open to current federal employees as well as veterans. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to include this additional information in case people see these icons. These are additional federal groupings of employees when they log into USAjobs, so that they're familiar with what each of these icons means. Next slide, please. Okay, here we have two job announcements that I pulled up out of USAjobs yesterday. You look at the open dates, you will see that the police officer job is open for 1 year, while the labor investigator job is open for 2 weeks. When you see that a job is open for 1 year, as in the police officer job, that is what we call an open continuous announcement. You can submit your application for this job at any time during the year that it is open, but the job announcement includes a date or perhaps several dates when the hiring agency will select a group of applicants to review. For example, if the job announcement says it will review applications on July 30th and August 30th, and you submit an application on August 1st, the hiring agency will review your application starting on August 30th. You notice that the labor investigator closed on November 17th. And at that time, all of the applicants will be reviewed, and if found eligible, they will be referred to the hiring manager. Please note, when a job announcement closes, it means you can no longer apply to the job, and job announcements close at midnight. There's also something that is infrequently used. It's called an applicant cutoff. Some job announcements close when the hiring agency receives a certain number of applications. If the cutoff number is reached during the day, the job announcement will close at midnight that night. And this is usually for jobs where you're going to have a high number of applicants. And so instead of getting 500 people applying, they might say, we're going to limit to 100. So you want to read through the announcement and know if that's the case with that job so that you can apply soon rather than waiting until later. Next slide, please.
Awesome. I was going to ask real quick, what are these little icons under?
So if you go back,
okay,
one slide, or I'm sorry, another, go back. There you go. So these are the icons you'll see. It used to just be written out on USAjobs, but they started including these icons. I don't remember exactly when, as kind of I guess a help. I'll be honest with you, to me, it's more confusing unless you just know what all these icons mean, or if you know where you fit in. But it's very important. It is very important to know where you fit in so that you're not wasting your time applying to jobs you're not eligible for. So if you go to that, if you go to the next slide, you will see that these jobs are open, both are open to the public. And then those arrows that are going in either direction, That's an IC tap. And what that does is anybody that's displaced, meaning if you had a federal job and you lost it due to the fact that the agency closed, then you could be eligible to apply for this job.
Awesome. Thank you.
Next slide. There are many appointment types. I'm just going to cover the most usual ones, I want to say. The first one is a permanent, and that's exactly what it means. That is exactly what it sounds like. It's a permanent appointment with no set time limit. I do want to encourage any veteran that's currently going to school or recently graduate to actually look into the student jobs that are available, because there's a pathways component, and the Pathways program was implemented by President Obama as a way to promote employment opportunities for students and recent graduates in the federal workforce. And it contains 3 paths to federal employment. The first path is for current students, and it's called the internship program. So you can be an intern, you can work either full-time and go to school, or work part-time and go to school, and you'll be paid accordingly. And in many cases, these positions, if they work out, if you like your employer and your employer likes the job you're doing, that can be rolled over to a permanent position. Ari, who's on this call with us, and she's done that several times in her within her office. The second path is for recent graduates, and it's called the Recent Graduate Program. So you have so many years, I believe it's 2, and don't quote me on it, that since you've graduated that you can apply under this program. Military members, veterans, have an additional number of years they're granted to apply underneath this particular path. And veterans preference does apply to all of these paths. If you're a student or you've recently graduated with a degree, I urge you to look at the pathways and students' positions as a way to join the federal workforce. Next slide, please. This is a very important topic, specialized experience and qualifications. So when you look at a job announcement, you want to read the qualifications section of the job announcement. Your resume and any supporting documentations that you upload into your application must show that you have the specialized experience and or the education and or any other qualifications that are listed in the announcement. So I've copied and pasted here a sample from an actual announcement, and it says specialized experience. 1 year of specialized experience, which includes providing administrative support in processing or screening applicants, questioning applicants, reviewing documents, maintaining records, and performing data entry. The definition of specialized experience is typical work performed in the next lower grade level within the federal service. So in this case, GS4. And what this is telling you is your resume needs to show that you have experience providing administrative support in each of those areas. So make sure your resume hits on all of those, because if it doesn't, then you're more likely to be set as being not ineligible because you're not in the correct hiring path, but ineligible because you don't have a specialized experience. Some jobs like this one, you can substitute education. And you can also, what this job announcement says, you can substitute a combination of education and experience. Please make sure you read the qualifications section of the job announcement. It's very important. Next slide, please. Documents that you may be asked to provide. So if you're a veteran, you're going to be asked, and you're claiming veterans preference, you're going to be asked to provide a copy of your DD-214. I cannot stress how important it is, and I'm sure that you have heard this as you're leaving the service, to have many copies of your 214, stashed in very secure places, because you're going to constantly need it as you're applying for jobs, as well as other things. The SF-15 is used if you're going to be applying for a 10-point veterans preference. And we'll go into that later. So what you will see in a job announcement is they're going to say, you can click, the following documents may be required, and it'll say DD-214, SF-15, and then it'll say SF-50. And then you'll be like, well, I don't know what an SF-50 is. Well, that doesn't apply to someone who's not already a federal employee, but it can be confusing. And that's why it's good to have someone who's worked in the system before help you out with this process. Go ahead to the next slide, please. Veterans preference. So there's been veterans preference, and I just learned this as I prepared this presentation, in various forms since the Civil War. And so there's various laws that cover it. And right now, we're working underneath the National Defense Authorization Act of 2006. Next slide, please.
That is so interesting since the Civil War.
Right,
Wow.
right. And the theory is, because, and this is, I found it interesting, if you have two people and one goes to college and in 4 years they have a degree, and one chooses to serve their country and in 4 years they're getting out, and they may have experience, but they don't have the degree, you somehow want to reward those people, right? But I want to make it clear, as it says in the top of the slide, the federal government does not give jobs to veterans who lack the training and skills to perform them. If a veteran has the same qualifications as a civilian counterpart for a job opening, the current law mandates the veteran gets the position. So it's not it's nothing where you're going to be placed ahead of somebody who's more qualified. It's just if you're as qualified as the next person and you're a veteran, you can claim the preference.
Awesome.
Next slide, please. General requirements for employment preference. To be entitled to preference, a veteran must meet the eligibility requirements that are set in Title V of the United States Code. So they must have an honorable or general discharge. Retirees at the rank of 05 and higher are not eligible for preference unless they're disabled veterans. Guard and active reserve duty for training purposes does not qualify for preference. So going on your annual training for 2 weeks a year will not qualify as you being receiving veterans preference. However, if you've served on active duty for an extended period of time, you can claim veterans preference. When you're applying for a federal job, veterans should claim preference on their application or resume. Most jobs in USA jobs will actually ask you the question. You don't have to include it in your resume, but if for some reason it doesn't, please, you would want to include that information. If you're going to claim 10-point preference based on disability, you need to complete that SF-15. Next slide, please. This is just a definition of what a 5-point preference is. So 5 points is a veteran who has been discharged or released from active duty in the armed forces and meets any of the following criteria. They've served during a war, they've served during different time periods, they've served more than 180 consecutive days, they've been in a campaign or expedition in which a campaign medal has been authorized. And please remember that the veteran must have been discharged under honorable or a general discharge. Next slide, please. And the 10-point preference is for a veteran or eligible family member of a veteran who served at any time and was released from active duty and or discharged and has a service-connected disability. So, or has received a Purple Heart. Again, the veteran must have been discharged under honorable or general discharge. And this is a note for veterans, for their family members. Certain spouses, widows, widowers, and parents of veterans may also be entitled. And again, to claim this 10-point preference, you'll need to fill out the SF-15 and include it with your application with your job. Next slide, please. These are just some federal hiring myths that I found I thought were interesting. You know, a federal resume should not exceed 2 pages. This is off of USAjobs, so take it with a grain of salt. But I know that a lot of people say nowadays your resume shouldn't be more than 2 pages. But if you have relevant experience, you should include it. That's my opinion. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Resumes are scanned for keywords in an automated system. And I've heard this, I hear this all the time. There are agencies that use automated systems, and that's only to verify that you've submitted all of the required documentation. And note, they don't scan for words in your resume and then say you're qualified. What happens is the automated system scans to make sure that you've completed all the application process, submitted all the required documents. Then they forward that on to a living, breathing HR specialist that reviews the document in your resume to make sure that you're qualified. You can work for the federal government if you've had a criminal record. There are certain jobs, of course, that you won't be able to qualify for, but you can. And there's, I've included the website or the link down below that you can look up some of this information and get more information on this. They can say that you have to know someone to get a federal job, and that they call that a myth. But I do think it's very helpful to know someone who's navigated the process successfully. So it's very helpful to have a mentor or a teammate, maybe a former colleague from the military that has successfully navigated that you can reach out to. And I think the gentleman before us mentioned that as well. It's part of networking. Next slide. Okay, anybody have questions for Tiffany or myself?
Well, I was going to say that is so much information that we went through so quickly that we are going to make not only the slideshow, but also some additional handouts and worksheets available. We're going to email it to all of today's attendees or those who have registered, and also post it within the description and the caption of our video link when we make this available. If you're watching us on demand at your own time, because we do realize that not everyone was able to join us in real time, but that there are so many valuable links that maybe you weren't able to jot down as they were quite lengthy. We will make all of this information available after the fact, and that you did include some additional handouts to help us continue to navigate USAjobs, and that is all so wealthy of information that you've passed along.
Well, thank you. Tiffany, I want to thank Ari for giving us this opportunity to present, because it's exciting for us being veterans and being federal employees. And Tiffany and I just wanted to request that perhaps we could get a list of attendees if they're willing to give us their names. We'd be willing to walk anybody through the process or help anybody that needs assistance, point them in the right direction.
Of course, yes.
I have a quick question about the USAjobs and the federal positions for veterans. In New Orleans, what type of departments or kind of offices are actually here? I know the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is not something that I had ever heard of before knowing.
We're small
Ari.
but mighty. Yeah, we're small but mighty.
But are there other kind of offices, or what? I guess what's out there locally for?
So the jobs that I have, a daily job search that comes to me. So I'm seeing a lot of stuff for the Veterans Administration, a lot of stuff for Army Corps of Engineers. There's also DHS, Department of Homeland Security. I see them, it's just my experience when on my job search, it kind of clumps of their jobs come through. I know the IRS has a big presence in town. Another major employer is the USDA. It's called the National Finance Center out in the East, out New Orleans East off of Old Gentilly Road. They post, again, kind of in clumps, and they have a lot of entry positions that come available. Tiffany, or Ari, do you have any other?
Yeah, I mean, we also have, I think you mentioned Corps of Engineers. Our sister agency, Bessie, is actually in the same building as us. I think there's a Federal Reserve office in the quarter. We have, plus all of the civilian jobs that are offered on Fed City as well as Bell Chase. So a lot of care jobs, a lot of, mechanic type jobs, airfield services jobs. So New Orleans is a small town, but there's surprisingly a lot of federal jobs around. And what's great about USAjobs and federal work in general is that we have locations all over the United States as well as around the world. So especially for veterans and military spouses where you're kind of thrown all over the place, it's very likely that there's federal work to be found in those locations. And on USAjobs, you can search by location. It's you guys are relocating back home. Once you're getting ready to transition to civilian life, you can start looking for work within wherever you're going back home to, if it's not New Orleans. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tiffany. I forgot about the Marine Corps and the Navy is a big presence here. The Navy out of Bell Chase and the Marine Corps at Federal City. So that's true. I totally forgot about them.
Well, I think it's great that you had mentioned going through the qualifications, because I was just working with a veteran that wanted to apply for a position there at Marfarez. And when he sent me so he sends me his resume and the position he was looking at, I was looking at the qualifications, and it said you had to have experience and education. And the education it was asking for was a PhD, and he had a high school diploma. And so I think it's very important that when we're talking to people about these federal jobs, they take a careful look at the qualifications, so they're not wasting their time. So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
So it's interesting you say that because Tiffany and I see this all the time, even with experienced federal employees, and I'm sure Ari sees it as well. When she's going through resumes, people do not read the job announcement. They just pick certain parts out of it and they submit the resume and they think that's all there is to it. And you really, really have to read the whole thing. And even if you get your spouse or a partner or a friend to read it again, and then look at your resume, which I've done that for friends and friends have done that for me to make sure that you're including everything that's in the announcement.
Yeah,
That'd be my
always
recommendation. I think it's a great
have
point.
people look through it.
Yeah, simply following directions is actually kind of, they say the receptionist can be the rejectionist, just following directions can be that rejecting factor. Something that I did also was thinking, how were your transitions, which thank you so much for your service. But I wanted to ask, how was it actually transitioning back to civilian life, maybe choosing to go into a federal job? What was that like for you?
Well, for me, there was a very big break. So I got out in 2006. I didn't start my federal career until 2015 because I was following my husband all around through the rest of his career. So it wasn't until we were in a permanent place that I finally started looking for a permanent type of position. I actually did find the announcement for my original job through Indeed, but it does take you to USAjobs. And then through there, I started as a secretary. So sometimes with federal service, just getting your foot in the door leads to lots of other opportunities because once you're in, then you have other pathways. There's a lot of, we call them merit promotions, but they're positions only available to current federal employees. So sometimes it's just about getting your foot in the door. Federal employment is great. The benefits are great. I can't speak better about the agency and the people I work for. So for me, it was a lot simpler because I had that, 10-year gap that I followed my husband around and just did random odd jobs. But federal service does feel, you get a little bit more of that camaraderie that you're used to from military service.
Yeah, for myself, I retired, I went on terminal leave in June, and I actually started my job that same, because as I said, I had a friend of mine who worked with me through the process. A lot of her information, I will say, was old because she'd been in the service for a while and she remembered things how it was when she applied. So I wish, I spent a lot of time spinning my wheels based on information that was no longer valid, but she was an excellent resource as far as explaining to me like how long things take. And OPM is trying very hard to streamline the process, but there's just there's factors that are outside of their control, and agencies do things different ways. So you can't be discouraged. You just need to stick with it. If that's what you want to be, if you want to be in the federal service, and like Tiffany said, it's been great for me, a great transition for me. It's not for everyone, but it's been a great transition for me. If you want to, then you need to just have that determination that you're going to stick to it and you're going to see it through.
Yes, and don't be discouraged when you're not hearing back right away, because it can take a while to hear back. So that's why those signing up for notifications in your profile is important, because it'll let you know when any of your job statuses or application statuses have changed. But it can also, if you're looking for certain types of jobs, you can tailor that to email you when jobs in that category and stuff have been posted. So yeah, don't get discouraged.
Do you recommend that a continuous follow-up? I know sometimes, as you said, things move slowly. If that office doesn't have any new information, I can imagine a consistent follow-up might get annoying. What would you recommend for that?
So it's difficult with federal service because once you apply, you pretty much just send it feels like you're just sending your, application out into the universe, and you're not hearing back for a long time. And a lot of times it depends on how many applicants have put in for the position, if they have how many people they have looking at those applications before it makes it to the hiring manager. So sometimes it can be up to 30 days before it even changes your status from applied to referred. So you won't really have a point of contact at that point. Once the hiring manager contacts you and you're set up with an interview time, then you'll kind of have a contact. But do expect that it is the federal government, so things take longer than private sector. Military hurry up and wait very much applies, which can be frustrating when you're, excited for a job or you're looking for employment. But in the end, for federal service, it is worth it. So it can be frustrating in the beginning, but if you stick it out, it's very much worthwhile.
To follow up on that, I definitely recommend the courtesy of, after you've interviewed with someone, sending them a thank you email. I do recommend that. Ari is a hiring manager, maybe she can speak to that. I don't know how you feel as a hiring manager if people call you over and over again, but you just, what are your thoughts on that, Ari?
Yeah, no, sure. Thanks. I would say for us, usually they tell us that we need to refer the person to the HR specialist because they're the next people to kind of pick up the next steps once we're done with interviewing. And I will tell you, they probably don't know how long things will take, but they're at least more in the know, if you will. They do generally try to kind of separate the hiring manager from the applicants after interviews are done and a potential decision is made. I will say people should be aware too that security clearance, it's a real thing and it does take a long time, especially I think lately we found it's even for short-term details has been taking almost longer for security clearance than the actual short-term detail was. So that's just something to think about. I do know when I interview, generally this information is what I give at the end because, I do ask how long would it take for you to start the job with the understanding that I have no idea when, you may be accepted. And we do lay out their security clearance. There's also, the paperwork to get everything through. I make a decision, but of course it's federal government. So other people need to check off boxes and whatnot. So I make it clear when I do interview, but, and if they reach out to me, I have no problem. It's just, they usually tell us to send them to the HR specialist for more details.
And that's a really great point on the personnel security process that I noticed it was on the slide that talked about myths about a federal job. And one of those is that you have to have a security clearance. You don't have to have a secret or top secret security clearance. But what you do have to do is you have to go through the security process and they do a background check and they will ask you to fill out paperwork to, that they can review to indicate that there's no deception or anything that's hidden in your background type of thing. So that's, I know that when I retired, everybody was saying, oh, if you have your security clearance, you're going to be in, like, it's no problem. It's not the case at all. Every agency, unfortunately, has their own personal security process. And that I know for ours, it takes, sometimes it's the longest time out of all the whole process itself.
Right.
And just a suggestion of that, sorry, Tiffany, is just make sure whoever you put on that list that needs to fill out your form is aware of it and is checking their mail. It hasn't been. Sorry, Tiffany, go ahead.
Yeah, and usually I think so it depends on the security level, but like for our agency, we're all just public trust. But I think you have to go back, 5 or 7 years. So maybe just kind of compiling that information ahead of time, your addresses in the last 5 years, which for military members can be hard to keep track of. Just things like that, because you'll have to provide like a neighbor contact, which I know for me, I was like, well, I don't know anybody that's there anymore. But maybe kind of keeping that in your thoughts is to kind of maybe make sure you have information for 5 to 7 years, depending on the type of clearance. And just because you have things in your background, you might have a DUI, whatever, That doesn't mean that you're automatically disqualified as long as you disclose all that information. So don't feel like you can't apply for federal service because you have, some minor marks on your record. So I just wanted to.
No, thank you, Tiffany, for bringing that up, because that's a huge point. If you do have something, you need to put it out there up front. You will not be penalized for putting it out there up front. You will be penalized if they find it after the fact. So be upfront. If you have something in your that's you're concerned about, put it out there. You won't get penalized for that.
Right. And so, and Ari had touched on that. They usually want you to contact the HR specialist. So in each job announcement on USAjobs, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the announcement, the HR specialist that's handling that particular job position announcement, their contact information and name is listed at the bottom. So maybe kind of save that information for if you have questions. Sometimes it's just good to, I like to call and just be like, did all of my documents make it through? They can't give you a lot of information when you call, but they should be able to let you know, oh yeah, all of these documents have uploaded, I can see them.
Awesome. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to let go and trust technology. So having that recommendation to follow through, follow up. And I know something that Jamie also kind of mentioned, and as we were discussing, I was very impressed with the USAjobs website screenshots that y'all showed. It did look, granted, you were giving us a very thorough tour, but it did look like it was doable. Like you could actually get out there and work on your job search smarter, not harder. We tell our clients to really avoid the spray and pray, like you were saying, applying to literally everything that you see. But instead, it looked like there were some really awesome filters that you could apply by location, and then also by veteran status as well, so that you can really find the job that's ideal and perfect for you.
Yeah, and you can searches. So if you're looking for a particular type of position, you don't have to re-put in all those filters each time. You can save the type of search, and then you just go into your profile, click on save searches, and rerun those searches. So there's a lot in the website, but once you're in there, it's very easy to navigate and use.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for your service. Thank you so much for your time today and joining us and being that voice of guidance for how to approach a transition from your veteran status to entering back into civilian life by potentially a job within the federal government. So thank you so much to Ari, to Tiffany, to Kathy of BOEM over at the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And Kathy.